You ever get that sinking feeling that no matter how hard you work, someone's already decided your effort is worth less than it should be? That was my reality for months. My name's Daniel, I'm 29, and up until recently I was the guy who always stayed late at the office. Not because I wanted to, but because my boss, Mr. Collins, had a way of asking that sounded a lot more like a command. Just a couple more hours, Dan, he'd say with that fake friendly smile. Team player, right? And every time, I nodded. Team player. That was me. The one who picked up the slack when others had families to run home to, who answered emails at midnight, who finished projects while everyone else enjoyed their weekends. I told myself it was temporary, that eventually my loyalty would be noticed. That someone would say, hey, Daniel deserves a raise. Daniel deserves respect. But recognition never came. Instead, my boss developed this habit of pretending overtime didn't exist. Hours past closing time? Just part of the job. Working Saturdays? That's what dedication looks like. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that grinding now meant payoff later. But the truth was, I was being strung along. And I wasn't the only one who knew it. The office had a strange energy after 6 p.m. fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, keyboards clicking in rhythm like a tired heartbeat, the janitor dragging his mop across empty hallways. My co-workers avoided overtime whenever they could. Some claimed fake doctor's appointments, others rushed out before Collins could corner them. They knew better. They knew he'd never pay us a dime for staying late. But me. I stayed. I remember one night in particular, a Thursday. The clock read 9:42 p.m. when I finally hit send on the last report. My eyes burned, my back ached, and my stomach growled from skipping dinner. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the empty office. Just me, the glow of the monitor, and the faint hum of the vending machine down the hall. That's when Collins strolled in. Not to thank me. Not to ask if I needed a ride home. He just peeked in, saw me there, and smirked. Good man, he said, like I was a loyal dog guarding the house. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, you know, Dan, real success doesn't come with a time clock. That line stuck with me like a thorn. Real success doesn't come with a time clock. Translation, you'll never get paid for this. I forced a smile. Yeah, of course. But inside, something cracked. On my walk home, city lights blurring in the drizzle, I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. I typed, Thursday, 9:42 p.m. overtime, 3 hours, 42 minutes. It was the first time I ever logged my extra hours. At the time, I didn't know why I did it. Maybe it was just to remind myself I wasn't crazy. That my time had value. But that little note, that single entry, would be the first spark of something I never saw coming. Because if Collins thought my overtime was invisible, I was about to prove him very, very wrong. And all it took was one invoice. The next few weeks felt like déjà vu on repeat. Work, stay late, get dismissed with a smirk. I started keeping that little log religiously. At first, it was just hours. Monday, 7:18 p.m., overtime, 2 hours 18 minutes. But then I added more, mileage for when I had to drive across town for urgent tasks, meals I skipped or grabbed on the go, even the electricity I was burning at home when Collins made me finish projects remotely. Every entry was a small act of defiance. No one knew but me. The office itself was a machine, sterile, fluorescent, with a hum that never really stopped. During the day, phones rang and printers jammed, managers barked orders, interns ran for coffee like it was a lifeline. But after hours? It was different. Silent, empty, haunted almost. Sometimes I'd glance at the reflection in the darkened windows and not even recognize the tired guy staring back. One night, I overheard two co-workers in the break room whispering. "Collins had me here until 10 again yesterday," one groaned, rubbing his temples. "Did you get paid?" the other asked. The guy actually laughed. "You kidding? He told me overtime is a privilege." I froze at the doorway, clutching my mug of stale coffee. Privilege. That word tasted like ash. I knew the guy wasn't exaggerating. Collins had told me the same thing once. "Consider it an investment in your career," he'd said, like he was doing me a favor. Except the only thing growing was his ego. Collins loved power. He strutted around like the office was his kingdom, tie loosened just enough to look casual but not approachable. His favorite trick was dangling vague promises in front of us. "Keep this up, and there might be a promotion in your future. Show me dedication, and I'll show you rewards." But promotions never came. Raises never came. Just more late nights. One Friday evening, when most of the office had escaped for the weekend, Collins cornered me at my desk. "Big project Monday. Need you to put in some hours tomorrow." I hesitated. "Saturday." He grinned. "Don't worry. I'll make it worth your while." I almost laughed. Worth my while. I already knew what that meant. More empty promises. But instead of arguing, I just nodded. "Sure thing." As he walked away, I opened my log and typed, "Saturday request. Add 8 hours pre-approved by Collins." My list was growing fast. And for the first time, I wasn't just keeping it for myself. Deep down, I was building a weapon. By the end of that month, I had logged nearly 60 extra hours. 60. That's a week and a half of full-time work Collins had simply erased. And yet, every morning, he'd stroll in with his coffee, slap my shoulder, and say, "You're the backbone of this place, Dan." He thought it was a compliment. To me, it was gasoline on a fire. What he didn't know was that I wasn't just his backbone. I was about to become his nightmare. By the third month, my log was starting to look like a second job all on its own. A spreadsheet now, color-coded, time-stamped, with notes on every single after-hours task Collins dumped on me. My friends joked I was becoming an accountant for my own suffering. But I wasn't joking. I was preparing. The thing about exploitation is, it creeps in quietly. At first, I convinced myself it wasn't so bad. Just a few extra hours. Just until this project is done. But the projects never ended. The deadlines multiplied like weeds. And Collins had this way of moving the goalposts every single time. "Almost there, Dan. Just one more round of edits. Client's picky. Let's tighten this up before Monday. You're the only one I can count on to stay late." That last one used to feel like a compliment. Now it sounded like a death sentence. One evening, I decided to test him. I finished everything by 6 p.m., shut down my computer, and started packing my bag. Collins appeared out of nowhere, blocking the exit like a security guard. "Heading out already?" he asked, voice dripping with mock surprise. "Yeah, finished my tasks," I said calmly. His smile tightened. "Well, if you're done, you can take a look at the Jenkins account for me. Shouldn't take long." I knew "shouldn't take long" in Collins' language meant at least 3 hours. I took a slow breath, then asked the question I'd been biting back for weeks. "Will this be counted as overtime?" The room went still. For a split second, Collins looked like I'd spoken another language. Then he barked out a laugh, loud, sharp, mean. "Overtime. Come on, Dan. This isn't a factory job. You want to nickel and dime me for staying late? You're salaried. You should be grateful I trust you with these projects. Grateful. That word rattled around my skull like a loose coin in a dryer. I nodded once, expression blank. Got it. Then I sat back down, opened the Jenkins account, and started the work. But inside, something clicked into place. That was the moment I stopped seeing Collins as a boss. From then on, I saw him as a debtor. And I was his collector. That night, I logged the hours as usual. But this time, I added interest. I started calculating the overtime rate I was legally entitled to, the late-night transportation costs, even the meal deductions. If he wasn't going to respect my time, I was going to put a $sign on every stolen minute. 3 hours later, when I finally left the building, I didn't feel exhausted like usual. I felt sharp, focused, dangerous. Collins thought my silence meant obedience. He had no idea it meant I was building the bill that would one day land on his desk like a hammer. The project Collins mentioned that night turned into a monster. It started as a quick client update, then ballooned into a full-scale campaign. Suddenly, I wasn't just staying late, I was practically living at the office. Friday nights, Saturdays, Sundays. My phone buzzed with Collins' emails at all hours. Need this by morning. Client just changed direction. Redo everything. Don't let me down, Dan. I stopped counting the hours. My spreadsheet did it for me. And watching the numbers pile up became its own twisted motivation. By mid-month, I was at 87 logged overtime hours. 87. Nearly 2.5 full work weeks on top of my regular schedule. The breaking point came one Sunday evening. I was in the office alone, hunched over a half-dead laptop, eating a vending machine sandwich that tasted like cardboard. My phone buzzed, not Collins this time, but my sister. Dan, are you coming? Mom made dinner. She hasn't seen you in weeks. I stared at the text, throat tight. Weeks. She was right. I had missed birthdays, dinners, everything that made life feel like life. I typed back, can't work. Then shoved the phone in my pocket like it had accused me of something. When I finally looked up from my screen, it was nearly midnight. The city outside was quiet, the office darker than ever. I walked to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and caught sight of myself in the mirror. My tie was loose, eyes red, skin pale under the fluorescent light. I didn't look like me anymore. I looked like a ghost who answered emails. The next morning, Collins waltzed in with his latte, chipper as ever. Great work this weekend, he said casually, like I hadn't just sacrificed 2 nights of sleep and my sanity. Clients loved the draft. Keep this up and maybe, I'll see about that promotion. That word again. Maybe. I stared at him, silent. Inside, I was screaming. Because I knew what that meant. More promises, no payoff. And I wasn't about to let another hour vanish into his black hole of gratitude. That night, I opened my spreadsheet and did something different. I didn't just log hours. I converted them into money. Down to the last cent overtime rate, weekends, meals, mileage. The total glared back at me like a neon sign. It was more than I made in a month. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile tugging at my lips. Collins thought I was just another overworked employee. But now, I had something he couldn't ignore. A bill with his name on it. By then, exhaustion wasn't just physical, it was bone deep. I'd wake up with my laptop still open, emails half-written, the cursor blinking like it was mocking me. My friends stopped inviting me out because they already knew the answer. Sorry, stuck at work. Even my sister stopped calling. The silence stung more than the long hours. But in that silence, I started calculating. Every time Collins dumped another urgent task on me, I added it to the spreadsheet. Not just hours anymore, everything. Train tickets for late-night rides home. Coffee receipts. Parking fees. Even the electricity from working remote at his demand. If he wanted to pretend overtime didn't exist, fine. I was going to put a price tag on every second of my existence he tried to own. And the total, it grew fast. $2,180. Then $3,740. By the end of that month, my phantom paycheck was just shy of $5,000. That number did something to me. For the first time in months, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. The breaking point came during a Monday meeting. Collins strutted in, late as always, with his overpriced coffee. The rest of us sat hunched around the conference table, bleary-eyed from another weekend of unpaid labor. He slapped a folder down on the desk. "Great job, team." The clients thrilled. "I know it's been a grind, but hey, that's what separates the real workers from the clockwatchers, right?" Everyone chuckled nervously. I didn't. Then he looked at me. "And Dan here, man, you're the MVP. Honestly, couldn't have done it without you." It should have felt good. It didn't. Because when the meeting ended, Collins pulled me aside. His tone dropped into that fake confidential voice he used when he was about to pile more on me. "Listen, Dan. Got another project lined up. Big one. I'll need you to stay on it, evenings, weekends, the works. You up for it?" I stared at him. My chest felt tight, not from nerves this time, but from something heavier, anger. "Will this be paid?" I asked flatly. Collins blinked, then smirked. "You're still hung up on that? Come on, Dan. Overtime's not how this industry works. You want to move up, you put in the hours. Simple as that." I didn't argue. I didn't protest. I just nodded. But that night, I stayed late again, not to work, but to prepare. I sat at my desk long after the last light in the office had gone out, formatting my spreadsheet into something clean, professional, undeniable. At the top, in bold letters, I typed, "Invoice, outstanding hours and expenses." Then I signed my name. For the first time in months, I felt wide awake. There's a strange satisfaction in turning pain into numbers. Every sleepless night, every skipped meal, every train ride home past midnight, it all had a line on that invoice. And the more I worked on it, the sharper it became. I wasn't sloppy about it. No, this wasn't going to be some angry rant typed out at 2 a.m. I treated it like an actual business document. Date. Invoice number. Client name, Collins and Company, that's what he always called the firm, even though it wasn't really his. Payment terms, net 15. Then came the breakdown. Overtime hours, 142.5 at legal rate plus 1.5x equals $4,987.50. Weekend labor, Saturday and Sunday 36 hours equals $1,260. Meal and transportation reimbursement equals $348.25. Remote work utilities, documented, equals $212.40. Total due, $6,807.15. At the bottom, I added a small note. Failure to remit payment may result in legal escalation per state labor code section, _______. It looked so official, I almost laughed. But I wasn't laughing when I slid it into a manila envelope and placed it neatly in my bag. The next morning, Collins came strutting in as usual, tossing his coat on the chair like a king throwing scraps to peasants. He didn't even say hello. Just launched into another tirade about a client deadline. Dan, I'll need you on this. Probably a few late nights again this week. You could. For once, I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him, really looked at him. His smug grin. His expensive watch glinting under the fluorescent light. The same man who had stolen weeks of my life and called it dedication. I reached into my bag, pulled out the envelope, and slid it across his desk. "What's this?" he asked, half amused. "An invoice," I said calmly. "For services rendered." He chuckled, like it was a joke. "You're serious? Dan, you're salaried. This isn't. Open it." I cut him off. Something in my tone must have hit him, because for once he actually did. He unfolded the papers, eyes skimming over the neat rows of numbers. At first, his expression didn't change. Then I saw it. The twitch of his jaw, the slight narrowing of his eyes. He flipped to the second page. Saw the total. And the smile vanished. For the first time since I'd known him, Collins didn't have a comeback ready. He just stared at the number like it was written in another language. I leaned back in my chair, calm as stone. "This," I said softly, "is what my time is worth." Collins stared at the invoice like it might explode in his hands. His lips moved silently as he read through the totals again. Then he let out a short, sharp laugh, the kind people use when they're rattled but trying to look in control. "Dan," he said, shaking his head, "this is cute. Really? You think you can bill me for this?" I didn't flinch. "I don't think. I know. Every hour is documented. Every expense has a receipt. It's all legal, and it's all owed." That wiped the smirk off his face. He set the papers down slowly, leaning back in his chair. "You do realize this isn't how things work, right? You're salaried. That means sometimes you stay late. That's just part of the job. Always has been." I met his gaze without blinking. "Not according to labor law. Salaried doesn't mean unlimited hours. There's a line, and you've crossed it." Repeatedly. For a second, his eyes flickered. Just a second, but I caught it, that little flash of doubt. Then, like clockwork, he masked it with arrogance. "Look, I get it," he said with mock sympathy. "You're tired. Maybe even frustrated. But this is unnecessary. Tell you what, I'll throw you a bonus at the end of the quarter. A nice one. Let's just forget about this invoice, okay?" His voice dripped with condescension, like he was patting a child on the head. But I didn't back down. "This isn't a request," I said evenly. "It's a bill. Payment is due within 15 days. Otherwise, I escalate." Collins leaned forward now, his tone hardening. "Escalate? To who?" "HR works for me. The partners listen to me. You really think anyone's going to back you up on this?" I let the silence hang for a beat, then slid another paper across the desk, a printed copy of the state's labor code, highlighted in yellow. His jaw tightened. "You'd be surprised," I said. The room went quiet. For once, Collins didn't have a smart remark. He just stared at me, lips pressed thin, the invoice trembling slightly in his hand. And in that silence, I realized something. For the first time in months, I wasn't the one afraid. He was. The silence in that office was heavy, thick enough to choke on. Collins wasn't used to being challenged, not by anyone, let alone the guy he thought of as his yes man. Finally, he scoffed, shoved the invoice back toward me, and said, "This is ridiculous. Nobody's going to take this seriously. Drop it, Dan, or you'll regret it. I picked the papers up calmly, slid them back into the envelope, and stood. 15 days, I said, keeping my voice steady. After that, I file with HR and the labor board. I walked out before he could answer. For the next few days, Collins avoided me. No late-night requests, no smug compliments, nothing. He gave me wide berth in meetings, his jaw clenched every time he glanced in my direction. The office felt different too, whispers trailing behind me, co-workers sneaking curious looks. They didn't know the details yet, but they could feel the shift. By day 6, I got the email. Subject line, meeting request, HR. When I walked into the conference room, Collins was already there, sitting stiffly at the table with the HR director, Ms. Ramirez. She was polite but professional, her tone clipped. "Daniel," she said, "we've received some documentation from you regarding unpaid overtime?" I slid the invoice across the table, along with the spreadsheet, neatly printed and tabbed. Yes. Every hour, every receipt. All verifiable. Collins cut in immediately, his voice dripping with disdain. "He's exaggerating. This is just a disgruntled employee trying to cash in. Nobody forced him to stay late. He volunteered. I didn't even look at him. I just opened my folder and pulled out emails, dozens of them. Each one from Collins. Each timestamped well past 6 p.m. Each demanding I stay late, work weekends, cancel plans. I slid the stack across the table. Ms. Ramirez adjusted her glasses, flipping through them slowly. Her expression didn't change, but the longer she read, the tighter Collins' face became. Then she looked up, calm but sharp. "Mr. Collins, these emails are direct instructions." He tried to laugh it off. "Come on, it's just the industry. Everyone puts in extra." "Not without compensation," she interrupted. "This is a liability. A serious one." The color drained from his face. I sat there quietly, watching the man who had drained me dry suddenly realize he was the one cornered. For the first time, he wasn't in control. And I wasn't invisible anymore. The room felt colder than the air conditioning could explain. Collins shifted in his seat, his smugness crumbling under the weight of Ms. Ramirez's calm stare. "Daniel has provided substantial documentation," she said firmly. "If this reaches the labor board, it won't just be costly, it will damage the firm's reputation." Collins opened his mouth, closed it, then finally snapped. "He's just trying to make me look bad. Everyone works extra hours, but suddenly he wants to nickel and dime the company." I finally turned to him. My voice was steady, almost too calm. "It's not about making you look bad, Collins. You did that yourself. This is about respect. My time has value, and I won't let you steal it anymore." His face flushed red, a vein twitching at his temple. "You ungrateful." "Enough," Ramirez cut him off. "Mr. Collins, I suggest you watch your tone." The silence after that was deafening. Ramirez turned back to me. "Daniel, here's what will happen. We'll conduct an internal audit of the hours you've submitted. If they check out, and based on these emails, I have little doubt they will, you'll be compensated accordingly. In full." Collins slammed a hand on the table. "This is absurd. You're going to side with him over me? After everything I've built here?" Ramirez didn't even flinch. "What you've built here, Mr. Collins, is a potential lawsuit. If you care about this company, I suggest you step back and let us handle this properly." For once, Collins was silent. His jaw clenched, his eyes locked on the invoice like it was a loaded gun pointed at him. I sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly. Months of fatigue, bitterness, and resentment finally started to lift. I had been his workhorse, his late-night shadow, his disposable yes-man. But now the roles were reversed. Collins was the one on edge. I was the one in control. When the meeting adjourned, Ramirez gave me a small nod, the kind that said you did the right thing. Collins stormed out without a word, his face pale, his pride gutted. And I knew then, my fight wasn't just about the money. It was about proving I was never his pawn. The audit didn't take long. My spreadsheet was airtight, my receipts in order, and those late-night emails from Collins were the nails in his coffin. HR verified everything, every single hour. 2 weeks later, a deposit hit my account. $6,807.15. The exact total from my invoice. Seeing that number flash across my banking app sent a jolt through me. It wasn't just money, it was proof. Proof that my time mattered. Proof that Collins couldn't erase me with a smirk and a dismissive laugh. Word spread fast in the office. I didn't brag, but whispers have a way of finding ears. Dan got paid for his overtime. HR sided with him. Collins messed up big time. For once, people looked at me with something other than pity for always staying late. They looked at me with respect. As for Collins, he was different after that. Quieter. His swagger gone. He avoided me like I carried the plague. Rumor had it the partners were furious, not just about the payout, but about the risk of a lawsuit. A month later, his office was empty. No farewell speech, no party. Just silence. I didn't celebrate his downfall. Honestly, I didn't need to. His own arrogance had done the job for me. The celebration came later, at my mom's dinner table. My sister teased me for finally showing up. My mom hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. For the first time in months, I wasn't exhausted. I wasn't invisible. I was present. Looking back, the money was nice, but it wasn't the real win. The real win was walking into that office every day knowing I'd stood up for myself. That I'd put a price on my time and refused to let anyone devalue it again. Sometimes respect doesn't come from waiting quietly. Sometimes it comes from sliding an invoice across the desk and daring them to ignore it. And trust me, once they see the numbers, they can't.